The average American household pays around $137 every month just for electricity. That adds up to $1,644 a year. Over the life of a 30-year mortgage, that's nearly $50,000 spent simply to keep the lights running. But here's the shocking part most people never hear about. After paying all that money, you still own absolutely nothing. You're basically renting electricity. Every month, the meter goes back to zero, the bill returns, and the cycle starts all over again. The power company controls the lines, the transformers, the meter, and in many ways, even your daily comfort. But what if that dependence could be broken for less than the cost of a pizza? The truth about electricity generation is surprisingly simple. Every generator in the world, whether it's inside a massive nuclear plant or attached to a wind turbine, works using the exact same principle discovered by Michael Faraday back in 1831. When a magnet moves past a coil of copper wire, electrons begin to flow. That's the entire secret. No magic. No hidden formula. Just a spinning magnet and copper wire working together. Yet somehow, a global electricity industry worth over $2 trillion is built on this one simple scientific discovery. The real question is simple. What actually makes the magnet spin? In a coal power plant, the process is far more complicated than most people realize. First, coal is burned to heat water. The water turns into steam. That steam spins a turbine, and the turbine finally spins a magnet. 4 separate energy conversions, and every step wastes power. By the end of the process, the system is only about 33% efficient. That means nearly 2/3 of the original energy is lost before electricity even reaches the wires. And the waste doesn't stop there. Once the power begins traveling through hundreds of miles of transmission lines, another 5 to 8% disappears along the way. So by the time electricity reaches your home outlet, you're essentially paying for 3 units of energy just to receive one. Strange, isn't it? The entire system profits from inefficiency, because the more energy wasted, the more fuel needs to be sold. But what happens if you remove all those extra steps? What if the magnet could spin without burning anything at all? That's where a permanent magnet alternator, or PMA, changes everything. Instead of fuel, it uses powerful neodymium magnets attached to a rotating rotor. Copper coils are wound around a stator, and the moment the rotor spins, electricity is produced instantly. No fuel, no combustion, no smoke, no endless monthly bills. The magnets don't suddenly stop working. The copper doesn't wear out overnight. And the laws of physics don't expire. A properly built PMA can generate electricity for decades with almost no operating cost, quietly turning motion into power year after year. Now things start getting really interesting. The first question most people ask is obvious. If there's no fuel, then what actually spins the rotor? The answer depends on the energy source available around you. Wind can spin it. Flowing water can spin it. A bicycle can spin it. Even movement from the human body can create rotation. But one of the simplest and most ignored methods costs less than $15 to build. It's called a thermoelectric generator, or TEG. Unlike traditional systems, a TEG creates electricity directly from heat, and it does it with absolutely no moving parts. The technology is based on something known as the Seebeck effect, discovered back in 1821. When 2 different metals are connected and one side becomes hotter than the other, electrons naturally begin flowing from the hot side toward the cold side. That flow creates electricity instantly. No turbine, no spinning magnets, no engine, just direct heat to electricity conversion. A single TEG module usually costs between $3 and $5 online. It's a small ceramic square, roughly 40 millimeters wide, but the science inside it is surprisingly powerful. Place one side against a heat source and keep the other side cool using a heat sink. That's it. A campfire can power it. A wood stove can power it. Even a candle flame or the heat from compost can generate usable electricity. One small module can produce around 5 to 8 watts of power. That's enough to charge a phone, run LED lights, or keep a small radio operating. Connect 3 modules together in series, and the output jumps to around 15 to 24 watts, enough to power a laptop without relying on the grid at all. But the story doesn't end with just a $15 setup. That small amount of power can be increased even further using a simple device called a boost converter, and it costs only about $2. Its job is straightforward. It takes low-voltage electricity and raises it to a more useful level. A typical TEG module produces around 3 to 5 volts. On its own, that's limited. But once connected to a boost converter, the voltage can be stepped up to 12 volts, the standard used for charging batteries, powering 12V appliances, and running an inverter for household electronics. Suddenly, that tiny heat-powered system becomes far more practical. Here's what the complete setup looks like for less than $15. 3 TEG modules at roughly $4 each, $12 total. 1 boost converter, about $2. Scrap aluminum heat sinks, often free if you recycle old materials. Total cost, around $14. For that price, you get a solid-state electricity generator with no moving parts, almost no maintenance, and zero fuel expense. As long as there's a temperature difference between the hot and cold sides, it keeps producing electricity day and night. In winter, the cold air makes the process even easier because nearly any heat source becomes effective. During summer, solar heat combined with the naturally cooler ground can still create enough difference to generate power. Now compare that to the traditional grid. The average household pays about $137 every month for electricity. Over 10 years, that becomes more than $16,000 gone forever. A simple TEG setup costs only $14 and can continue generating power for over 20 years. And scaling up isn't nearly as expensive as people think. A larger 100-watt setup using 12 modules, along with a proper battery bank, can be built for around $80. In many cases, the savings cover the cost in just a few weeks. So why don't more people hear about systems like this? Because large utility companies depend on customers staying connected and dependent on the grid. For decades, many of them pushed against small-scale power generation. They challenged net metering policies, added connection fees, and in certain places even supported rules that made fully disconnecting from the grid extremely difficult. Think about how strange that sounds. In some places, it's actually illegal to completely stop buying electricity from the grid. Imagine being required by law to stay connected to a product you may not even want. But here's the reality. Physics doesn't care about regulations. The Seebeck effect works whether a utility company approves of it or not. If a TEG module is sitting on top of a wood stove, generating electricity from heat, it will keep working regardless of local policies or corporate rules. Thermodynamics cannot be voted out of existence. Heat flows, electrons move, and electricity is created. That's simply how nature works. Now imagine scaling this idea the smart way. A single TEG module proves the concept, but true off-grid power comes from combining several simple components into one reliable system. For around $50, you can build a setup capable of providing real energy independence. Start with 4 TEG modules connected to a wood stove or rocket stove, producing roughly 20 to 30 watts continuously. Add a small used 12-volt battery for about $15 to store energy. Connect a 150-watt inverter for around $12. Then finish the setup with LED lights and USB charging cables for a few extra dollars. The total cost stays close to $50. Yet that small system can provide lighting, charge phones, power radios, and run small electronics for years without a monthly bill. As long as heat exists, electricity continues flowing. And here's the number that matters most in off-grid power, not volts, not watts, but cost per watt-hour over the entire lifetime of the system. Grid electricity averages around 15 cents per kilowatt-hour in many places. A TEG system costs money only once during setup. After that, the electricity it produces is essentially free for decades. The comparison isn't even close. This is what utility companies fear more than anything. People realizing the grid is no longer the only option. Maybe the centralized system won't disappear completely, but the moment people can produce their own power, the monopoly begins to weaken. And once a service becomes optional, it loses the ability to charge whatever it wants. The first time you generate your own electricity, even if it's only enough to charge a phone, something changes mentally. You realize power doesn't have to come from a corporation. It can come directly from the laws of physics themselves. The equation is surprisingly simple. Heat difference plus thermoelectric material plus time equals electricity. No advanced engineering degree. No complicated infrastructure. No endless monthly payments. Just science, basic materials, and a small investment. Now ask yourself this. What source of heat in your home is being wasted right now instead of being turned into electricity?